And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again this week by Electrek's publisher, Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. And we're actually pretty close to each other this time, believe it or not. We're like 30 miles apart because I'm in New York City.
I'm just north in Westchester, but commutable.
Nice. So hopefully we have less of a satellite lag this time,
Yeah.
which is good because we have a lot of interesting stories to cover. Just a quick rundown of some of the things we'll be looking at. Veo unveiled a new shared electric bike, but it has two seats, so you can fit two people on it. We reviewed the Wallke H6, which is perhaps the fastest and most massive folding e-bike I've ever tested. I personally had one of my very nice electric bikes stolen in the past week, so I wrote a post about all the mistakes I made and how I could have done a better job of protecting it, so hopefully it helps you guys. We've also learned of a new electric bike motor that claims to have the highest power to weight ratio with 2,500 watts of power. Harley-Davidson is going to be reopening reservations for their second electric motorcycle, the Del Mar. Speaking of electric motorcycles, we're also hearing about Zero's DSR X, their new adventure electric bike, and we're going to finish it up with a awesomely weird Alibaba electric vehicle of the week, but we'll wait till the end to let you know which one that is. So where are we starting today, Seth?
So we're starting with cops on electric Harley-Davidsons, but with a twist. Police department adopts Serial 1 e-bikes.
So yeah, it's common to see Harley Davidsons as police motorcycles. A little less common is to see police bikes, but even less common is to see Harley Davidson police bikes, as in bicycles. But Serial One just partnered with their local police department in Wisconsin there, and now they've set them up with four police issue Serial One electric bikes. And if you're not familiar with Serial One, they're the electric bicycle brand that Harley-Davidson spun out from their own internal bicycle development. And so they hooked them up with two different models, which are interesting different models. Two of the Rush Speed models, which are very much a city bike. Is that the one that you tested out, Seth, a while
Yep.
ago?
Yep.
So yeah, that's the gets up to 28 miles an hour, uses a Broza motor. It's basically a nice urban commuter. Then the other two bikes that the police department is using are the Bash mountain bikes. And these are, despite the mountain name, they're kind of more, they call them like an urban play bike in that they don't have suspension other than a suspension seat post, but they're designed to be, super rugged and ride them downstairs, ride them up walls, that sort of thing. And so across these two models, the police department should be pretty well equipped for chasing down the bad guys, as long as the bad guys don't have an illegal electric bike that goes over 28 miles per hour.
Yeah.
It's
No, that's
Sorry, go
that's
on.
so this is pretty cool. I have lots of questions. Like, first of all, like, is Harley going to expand this out to, other? Is this kind of like a pilot project, or is this just, helping the locals out?
So they haven't made an announcement about expansions, but I can't see them not being interested in expanding this because it makes so much sense. Harley Davidson is basically the go-to motorcycle for police departments. They already have such a strong fleet relationship that
Yeah.
it just makes sense to, transfer that over to their bicycle department, especially with more police departments looking at expanding not just their bicycle fleets, but especially their electric bicycle fleets, because as we've seen before, a lot of municipalities have these quotas where they're trying to push municipal departments to move towards electric vehicles, and electric bicycles as well as electric motorcycles are a very easy and cost effective way to increase the number of EVs in the fleet without buying crazy expensive Teslas or F-150 Lightning police trucks.
Yeah. And so, you think of Harleys and motorcycle cops, you think kind of Chips in California because they have got the good weather and because Chips, but uh are they going to use these in the winter time as well? I know, Milwaukee has some pretty good winters. Do they have like spokes or studs on the wheels, or what's the plan there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I imagine they're going to outfit them with ice tires or snow tires. Both of these bikes use high quality components. Those batteries were developed by Harley Davidson, the same department that developed the Harley Davidson live wire batteries. So, they should be rated to down to like -20, which most good lithium batteries are. So, terms of the components, I don't see any winter issue. But like you said, it's going to be pretty important to outfit those bikes with the right tires and the right gear to handle that cold, as well as the police officers as well. Make sure they got the right gloves on.
Yeah. So, just I think I know, but maybe for the audience, Harley is three names right now. They're Harley Davidson for their old fashioned internal combustion motorcycles. They're Live Wire for the electric motorcycles, and Serial One for the bikes. But internally, it's kind of the same company, right? Or is that not right?
Um, they're all under the Harley umbrella, but Serial One was technically spun off as its own startup that is it's either wholly owned or Harley still has a majority share in it. So,
Okay,
it's still Harley, but it's a legal entity underneath Harley. And
got it.
Livewire, just like you said, it originally was Harley. The first bike was the Harley Davidson Livewire, but then they spun it out also as a sort of sub brand. That one, I'm not sure it has the same legal distinction as a separate, legal entity the way that Serial One has. I'm not sure about that. It might just be that it's a sub brand that's still wholly under the Harley Davidson parent company, but it's also sort of their electric only line of motorcycles, the way Serial One is their bicycle only line.
Cool. Well, think it's. I think you'll agree that it's going to be good to see a lot more of these e-bikes out on the patrol rather than cops on segways or silly things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. New electric bike with two seats brings passenger travel to shared micromobility.
So electric bikes are already common with operators, like Lime and Bird and such that want to do the shared mobility, but with something bigger than a scooter, right? A lot of people are more comfortable on bigger wheels, having pedals beneath them, sitting down, but there's not a great way to carry someone with you on a bike without putting them on the handlebars or them on the seat and you standing on the pedals. So Veo is one of the first companies to come out with a two-seater electric bike, and this is actually an electric bike. It doesn't have foot pegs, it has pedals. It's not like the Bird Cruiser or something where it was more of a scooter setup, and so you can actually pedal this thing as well as using the throttle, but it's got that long bench seat like we might see on something like a Super 73 that's designed to make the bike much more comfortable for two people to ride and of course, much safer. So we actually just saw this unveiled in person at the Micromobility America conference last week in San Francisco. And it's a pretty slick looking bike. For a two-seater, it's still quite small. It's not super heavy. And it looks like, a nice solution to be able to carry a friend or a child with you and not have to do dangerous two-up riding on a standing scooter or something like that. So I think this is a cool new trend, and personally I think this is the way these things need to go, because being able to carry multiple people just doubles the utility of these vehicles, and it makes it that much easier to say, all right, well, let's not get a Lyft or an Uber, let's just take a two-seater e-bike kind of thing.
Yeah. So specs wise, what are we looking at here? Do we even know? Do they provide information about the power and
Yes. So it's got a 750-watt motor and it goes 20 miles an hour. So they've basically maxed out what they could do legally as a Class 2 e-bike. It's not going to go over that, so they didn't explore Class 3 range, which would have allowed them to go up to 28 miles an hour. But interestingly, I thought these bikes had pedal assist as well, but it turns out that they only have throttle control.
huh?
So if you pedal, it's not going to activate the motor at all. And I'm not entirely sure why they chose to go that way. The only thing I can think of is that they know most people are not going to pedal them anyways, so why put a part that's going to break?
Right. So they just put pedals on, and I mean, I'm assuming there's probably no gears on the pedals as well. So it's kind of vestigial or vestigial.
Yeah, I mean they work. You could pedal it. Let's say the
Right.
battery was dying or something, but the functional and effective are two different things.
Right. And I notice the seat is kind of, if you got two people on there, the seat is kind of close to where the pedals are. So unless you have very short legs, that's going to be kind of a hard pedal anyway.
Yeah, I mean I can't imagine seeing anyone realistically pedaling this thing other than a few strokes to see what it feels like. So
Y-
it kind of makes sense why they didn't invest heavily in the pedal assist part of this setup.
Yeah. And there are those 20-inch wheels. They look a little smaller.
It's a good question. I think they are, but
Okay.
yeah, they don't look too big, do they?
No, I wonder if they're maybe just slightly smaller or something. Maybe like so width wise, they're probably not 4 inches. They're maybe like a rad runner 2.5 inches or something.
Yeah, it could be sort of an odd size that you'd think they'd standardize it. Fortunately, they did go with those nice mag wheels, which both look nice and will definitely be lower maintenance for them. So that was a nice move, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if that's a part that we've seen before. I think we were looking at Himaway or something that had Bafang mag wheel set. I wonder if that's similar. And that's not a front motor. That's like a drum brake or something.
Yeah, I think that's a drum brake exactly.
Okay, cool. Look forward to seeing more from that, VO. All right, moving on. The walk, is it spelled walk or some?
I always say Wallke. I think that's how
Okay,
they pronounce it, but it's a weird spelling for sure.
yeah. All right, Wallke H6 review, the fastest, most massive folding electric bike I've ever tested, and you've tested quite a few, so let's hear about this.
Yeah, so the qualifier there is folding. So I've tested bigger and faster bikes, but when it comes to a folding e-bike, this is basically a bike that shouldn't even really fold. It's that big. It's like 90 pounds, two batteries. So you see one of them there, which I think is a 48 volt, 21 amp hour, and there's another either 10 or 14 amp hour battery within the frame there. So you get 1.6 kilowatt hours of battery. It's got two seats there, though that rear one is basically a child seat because it's so low to
Hmm.
the tires. And the thing is rated for 32 miles an hour. I put my GPS on it, and I only got it up to
Hey
31,
everyone,
but I
Micah
figured
here.
that's close enough for me to say that they are fairly honest with the speed rating. So 31 miles an hour on a 90-pound bike, that thing gets moving seriously fast, and it's got a lot of momentum to it. If anything, to me, this is basically like a Super 73 style motorcycle bike, just in a folding format.
Mm.
And I did fold it up and tested it that way, and like, yeah, it folds into a smaller piece. It's the two folding spots on the handlebars and the frame, so you get it into sort of this cuboid shape, but it is like a 90-pound mass of metal, so don't expect to fold it up and like walk it onto the subway very easily.
Yeah, no kidding. 90 pounds. That's hopefully you got your lifting belt on when you put that in the back of your car. I noticed there's two sets of keys on there. Is that one for each battery?
Yeah, exactly. It would have been nice if they had keyed it alike, but
Yeah.
I guess the cheap and easy thing is to just have two different keys.
Yeah, I mean, having a 1 kilowatt hour battery on the back is kind of like, I mean, it's basically like a bike that we've seen before, except they added a 1 kilowatt hour battery, and I think they overjuiced the rear motor. This isn't like an aerial where they have a front and back motor, which with two batteries probably was tempting. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, they're overclocking that thing, and in addition to that, they just they spec'd it with so many parts. If you see those brakes there, those things are
Yeah,
like scooter discs. They're so thick. I mean, those must be like 3 millimeters thick, where normally you're looking at like 1.8, maybe 2 millimeters. I honestly think those came off of like a scooter or like a 50 cc motorcycle or something. It's got full suspension, not only full suspension with front and rear, but it's got a suspension seat post as well. So you could kind of call it triple suspension. It's got those
yeah,
mirrors.
and then you got
Um,
the big tires as well, so pretty
yeah,
plush.
yeah. I mean, that's part of where all that weight comes from. Like they just kept adding things, and you
Yeah.
wind up with like a lot of features, but also a very heavy bike.
Did you end up using the Altus gear changer at all, or is it pretty much just low gear?
Oh, I just lost your audio there,
Oh,
Seth.
am I
Oh, you're
back?
back.
Okay.
You're back. Yeah.
I was curious about the uh, the rear sprockets, Shimano Altus. Is that Did you even use that, or is that kind of
So I basically ended up leaving it in top gear because with a bike this fast and powerful, you tend to ride it faster.
yeah,
And it's nice in theory to have those gears. If I lived in a hillier area, I
right.
might have used them. But testing it in Florida, it basically stayed in top gear. You can see I almost fell over when I folded the
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, you can tell it's pretty heavy. I guess you could maybe take some of the weight off by pulling the battery out, but it's still going to be significant. It looks like.
Yeah, you're
And
gonna be left with like 75 pounds of bike, I think, without batteries.
so was the folding mechanism like more reinforced because of the weight, or is it just like you know the a typical folding
Yeah,
mechanism?
the whole thing feels pretty chunky. So, nothing about it felt flimsy. The folding mechanism didn't worry me, which, is certainly a concern after seeing that Fido bike that used to break in half. So, especially on these bigger, heavier bikes, that's a good thing you want to check out. You make an excellent point, but here it seems like the folding mechanism is certainly overbuilt. You can also see how much of that lip just sort of overlaps there. It's quite a chunky folding mechanism.
Yeah. All right. Definitely want to check this one out next time it's available. So hopefully we'll get a chance to take a look at that. Speaking of bikes being available, this post is interesting to me. I just had another expensive e-bike stolen. Here's what would have stopped it.
So yeah, this I actually found out that the bike was stolen when my wife texted me a picture of my broken lock where I normally
Ooh.
park my bike in the garage, and like I had, if anyone's ever had their bike stolen before, that like rush of like feeling violated and feeling angry and just like all of those emotions at once. So I just like came to my keyboard and I just banged out this post right away to sort of like put all that like frustration into something that would hopefully be useful. So I wrote, I think, like 6 or 7 tips here for like things that I instantly knew I had made mistakes and got lazy with locking my bike, and things that I would recommend everyone, keep in mind. So the first is that I only used one lock. Well, you should always use more than one lock. This was in a locked parking garage to my apartment building, and so I kind of thought, well, the door to the garage is locked. That's like my first lock. I'll just put a chain lock on the bike to make it easier for me each day when I unlock and ride out. But obviously that wasn't enough because someone probably just either tailgated in or the door was broken for a little while and they walked into the garage and took some bolt cutters to my lock, which itself wasn't amazing. It was a chain lock with a 4 spinner combination, but they just cut through the combination mechanism as opposed to the chain, and that was that. So yeah, first tip, definitely use more than one lock, and make it different types too, a chain and a U lock or something. Next, park next to a nicer bike. There was like 7 or 8 bikes there, and mine was the nicest one. So obviously, if someone's got their pick of the bikes at 3 in the morning, they're going to go for the most expensive one in the group.
I
So
was gonna say
it's like
that's like the you don't have to be faster than a bear, you just have to be faster than your friend uh
yeah,
philosophy. All right.
exactly. Yeah, you don't have to buy a crappy bike, but it has to be crappier than your neighbors.
Right. So
Um, so yeah, if you drive a Civic, park next to a Porsche kind of thing.
right.
Um, Next, I left my battery on the bike, which was basically just laziness. I didn't take it upstairs each day so that it was just easier for me to come down and ride. So it's much less enticing to a thief to steal a bike without a battery because they can't resell it for as much and they have to find a battery that fits. So take your battery off if you can. And then in the same token, take the whole bike inside with you if you can. Theoretically, I could have each day brought my bike into the elevator, brought it up to my apartment floor, and then taken it down again each morning. But I was lazy. I didn't do that. I locked it in the parking garage, and we all know how that story ended. So take your bike inside if you can.
Yeah.
Um, Next is don't park in the same place every day. I parked my e-bike in the same spot. If someone was watching, they could easily, case it and see which lock I used and decide, when to come back and bring the right tool. So if you have to park, at work every day, try parking in a different spot, park a block or two away so that you have many different places and someone can't establish your routine. The next one is one that I was planning to do and unfortunately didn't have a chance to do yet, is to install a tracker on your bike. There are GPS specific trackers, which are nice because some of them are designed to hide either in the bike frame or to look like a bike light or something. But I had just gotten some air tags and I was about to
Oh
put one on
man.
my bike. Yeah, it was frustrating. I'd already like I had them, I just hadn't put them on yet. And so there are all these cool devices. There's like bike bells you can hide a AirTag in, or reflectors or water bottle holders that all have like AirTag mounts. And so it's easy to hide it in something that a thief won't even realize is there. So consider like a $25 AirTag to protect a multi-thousand-dollar e-bike.
Yeah, and
Uh,
if you have a big night out and you forget where you put your bike, it also helps in that case as well.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Or if you're like parking in Amsterdam where there's thousands of bikes and you can't find it in the
Which one is
parking lot.
right? Uh,
Yeah.
if you don't have something like this, where's a good spot to put an air tag? Like under the seat, or in a wheel well, or where
Yes.
do you recommend?
S- So what I was planning to do was to basically tape some black duct tape and just put it under the saddle. Like a savvy thief would probably look around there, but for just like some drug addict that takes it in the middle of the night kind of thing, they're not like looking real carefully for air tags. So that would be the easiest place. But a lot of e-bikes have frame tubes that are so wide that you might be able to like take out your battery and like slip an air tag into the frame somewhere.
Oh yeah. But I wonder if that would block the Bluetooth that it uses. I
Yeah,
guess
it's a good question.
you have to try it out once you mount it, make sure it's still responding. And
Yeah.
then once, so if you do have an air tag on your bike and somebody steals it, do you just go crazy and follow the thief, or do you call the cops and have them write up a report and never do anything about it? What's the protocol there?
Yeah, so I think the established answer is that you're supposed to call the police, and
Right.
then um, the generally accepted belief is that the police won't do anything, which is probably correct. And so at that point, you have to decide if you're going to go all like Liam Neeson and
Right.
like I have a special set of skills to get my bike back, kind of thing.
Right. Just maybe it's your neighbor or something, and you go steal it back the next day or something. Uh, yeah. Okay. And then bike insurance, huh?
Yeah, that's the last thing is that there are companies that do specific electric bike insurance. They're also, general purpose insurance, and it may even be covered under your homeowner's insurance, or if you have it, renter's insurance. Of course, I didn't have renter's insurance, so that didn't help me.
Right.
But if you have it, consider like, putting your e-bike under your plan, especially if it's a nice one. Like this was the nicest e-bike I have, which is my Priority Current, or I
Mm,
had.
right. I think when I was in college, I bought a Gary Fisher mountain bike on an American Express card, and it got stolen. It's a funny story. I had it locked to a fence, and the whole fence was gone. Like somebody just stole like 30 feet of fence somehow. I don't even know.
Wow.
So, but I was like, oh wait, American Express says they insure your purchases. So I ended up getting another Gary Fisher from them. So that was nice. I don't
Oh,
know
that's
if
awesome.
American Express still does that kind of stuff, but maybe when you're buying an e-bike, check out those options for your credit card. I think Chase has something similar to that.
Yeah, that's amazing. They stole an entire fence to get your bike.
Yeah, I think they
I
just
mean,
do it in a truck or something.
yeah, I've heard of cases where guys will pull up to a bike rack, like in New York, where there's like 20 bikes on it, and they'll just connect it to a pickup truck and drive off and rip the bike rack out of the ground, and then throw
Yeah.
the whole thing in the back.
New York is kind of crazy. I mean, they have locks called like New York locks that,
Yeah.
obviously get worked over by New York folks as well. But they have just the technology, like they freeze the locks and then they hammer it open, or they have like, full on jaws of life. Like they're going to get your bike one way or another. So, it's kind of a shame because New York would be such a much better city if everybody was riding bikes. Um, so I don't know what you do about it. I think maybe better cops would be helpful. One time at NYU, I got my bike stolen right in front of a security. Like I had locked it maybe 5 feet in front of a security guard, like a security guard desk at and the bike was gone. And I went to the security guard. I was like, "Hey, did somebody break a lock here?" And he was like, "I don't know." Just like literally, he would have to have seen it happen, and frankly, he probably was in on it. But uh, New York is just not a safe place for bikes, unfortunately. It's too bad. So, perhaps consider some of these other mechanisms like air tags, or don't, take it up to your apartment. All right.
Yeah. Well, the if you go into the comments real quick, the top comment I think was someone saying that the the punishment for horse thievery used to be hanging. Not that I condone it, but when there were bigger punishments, um,
Oh
there
wow,
was
Leftones.
fewer horse theft. So just a just an option there is to raise the punishment for bike thieves.
Yeah, I would say that I feel bad for you, but knowing how many e-bikes go through your hands on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis, I probably feel a lot worse for somebody else who this is probably their only bike. So I do feel bad for you, but just not as bad as I would feel for somebody
Yeah,
who
and I
lost
get
their
that.
only bike. All right, moving on. This US made 2.5 kilowatt electric bicycle motor claims the highest power to weight ratio in the world.
The OptiBike PowerStorm MBB, or motorized bottom bracket. And this thing is kind of wild. It's a 1500-watt continuous but 2500-watt peak rated motor, and it's designed to basically be the bottom bracket of the bike. So similar to the way that like a Broza or a Bosch motor slots in there, though this one is actually round and kind of looks like a bottom bracket. But this thing is just like insanely powerful. And the cool thing is that it's actually been developed and produced in the US. It's from a company called OptiBike, which we talked about a few weeks ago, I believe, that they're based in Colorado and been building bikes since, I want to say, like the late 2000s, so like maybe like 2009, 10, something like that. And they've just got a ton of experience. They build really expensive electric mountain bikes, but they're very high quality. So they developed this thing that's basically designed purely for off-roading, right? Like this is obviously well over the 750-watt limit for our standard bike electric bicycle classes in the US. So don't think that this is something you're going to be flying down the bike lane in. This is for someone who wants to go overlanding, explore trails, uh, perhaps blaze their own trails, and do it all on a bike that you can actually pedal. And at first when I saw this, I was like, all right, well, at that point, why not get a dirt bike? But at the same time, I definitely see a lot of advantages here because unlike a loud, heavy, expensive dirt bike, well, I guess this is still expensive, but unlike a loud and heavy dirt bike, this is much lighter. You can actually get the feeling of riding a bike because you are pedaling it. And depending on the power output you use, you can still get a decent workout as well. But you don't feel like you have this big, heavy machine. You're on what's, a much lighter, much more nimble bicycle feeling type of ride. And that's really kind of the goal here, was to create a lightweight motor that packed in a ton of power. And this is, I think, 8.5 or so pounds, which is, considering the 3.5 horsepower or something you get out of this thing, is just like mind blowing how much power you get in something that fits in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. So what's the total weight of the bike?
So it goes on a few different bikes. This one, I think it's on their R22 bike, which is probably like 120 pounds or something.
Oh
But that
wow.
one comes with like 3 kilowatt hours of battery. So
Right.
I think they also have it on some of their bikes that don't have such ridiculous amounts of battery. And so you could certainly get this on a bike that weighs less than 100 pounds.
Yeah, and we should caveat this. Luna makes a crazy X2 ludicrous controller that takes a one of their uh, BBHSD or M600 motor and overclocks it to up to 2.5 kilowatts. And they don't have an insane battery on there. I think it's only like 800 kilowatt hours, or sorry, watt hours. So that technically is probably a lighter bike that goes up to 2.5 kilowatts, but it's not. It's kind of a hack, and we'll have a review on that soon. But it's not really a long term solution to 2.5. It's more like in a pinch when you need a lot of power, it's got it, but it'll overheat really quickly if you keep it at that kind of high output. This is actually kind of interesting. I noticed. Is there like a gear ratio in here, or is it just used to slow, uh, like
It's
a
yeah, it's a
slow RPM?
No, thank you.
It's a good question. I think that it doesn't actually have a gear reduction in there. It looks like it's a direct drive motor,
Interesting.
but I'm not positive. There could be a lot going on in there that I don't know because I haven't seen the inside of it.
Yeah, but it does
But
look like a regular motor, just direct.
Yeah, and so it could be that it's just incredibly torquey, designed for low RPM.
Yeah.
But you can bet that the OptiBike engineers put some serious engineering into that thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say if this is possible, like that kind of changes the game a little bit because then you don't have to deal with the gears and it's gonna be much quieter, much it's like what usually breaks in a motor is either the belt if it's like a Broza or the vinyl gears and Bosch bikes and other bikes. So if this is a direct drive, that's another game changer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it looks very impressive. So, hats off to the OptiBike team because they've really designed something quite nice here. And the fact that they sort of started from the ground up and, it's not a hodgepodge of parts, but it's really their own unique product is pretty neat. Something we don't see that often in the e-bike industry.
Yeah. So are we gonna get a review of this one?
That I'm not sure about. I wouldn't hold your breath, but if we can, I'll have them send it up to Croton there.
Okay. All right. Moving on. We're back to Harley Davidson. To reopen the Del Mar Electric motorcycle reservations after the first round sold out.
Yeah, so now we're going up a little bit in the weight class here. We're up to like real motorcycles now, as opposed to e-bikes that are almost motorcycles. As we talked about a bit before, Livewire is Harley-Davidson's electric sub-brand, and the Del Mar is technically their second model of electric motorcycle, but really it's their first in-house model after they inherited the Livewire one from Harley. And so there's been a lot of excitement about this launch. It's a somewhat smaller, somewhat lower performance bike, but only slightly. It should get up to close to 100 miles an hour. Has a smaller battery, so they're talking about 100 miles of city range. And really, that's the kind of riding it's designed for. Certainly, you can take it on a highway, but your range is going to suffer. So they released it earlier this year, I think in May, and the first 100 units of the launch edition sold out in 18 minutes. And ever since, people have been like, champing at the bit to get the next edition that isn't that more expensive $18,000 launch edition. So now they're going to open up orders to what I believe is going to be a $15,000 sort of like normal series of the Del Mar. And this is going to be the first bike from Harley, or rather Livewire, that is actually designed as more of a mass market bike as opposed to the Livewire 1, which was really designed to be a flagship motorcycle and to sort of show off the engineering prowess of Harley-Davidson. One of the big differences here is the powertrain. So whereas the Livewire had that Revelation motor, which was super sophisticated but also super expensive, it ran longitudinally down the bike and then had a 90-degree bevel gear to turn the output to actually line up with the rear wheel. This one goes with the much more common zero motorcycle style coaxial, or not coaxial, but I guess parallel axis motor that just uses a simple one reduction belt drive to drop it down to that final gear ratio. So much simpler, much more tried and true, and it helps bring the price of the bike down to something that hopefully Livewire can actually still make a profit on and sustain themselves. But at $15,000, we're talking about a bike that more average folks can see themselves buying, even if it's a bit pricey.
Yeah, I think the look of this is really interesting. I would almost say it kind of looks cooler than the original Livewire. I like the I don't know what you call those on the battery, but is that functional as well, like for cooling? The ribs, I guess you would say, or what is that?
Yeah, those are the cooling fins for the battery, and the
Uh-huh.
battery is actually a really interesting part of this design because it replaces a frame. You might realize that if you sort of look around the bike, there's no like frame anywhere. That's
Hmm.
because it doesn't have one. Like the Livewire had that cast aluminum trellis frame. This one uses a structural battery pack, which we've seen, in Tesla and other places moving to. So this structural battery pack both houses that battery. It's got the cooling fins built in, and it has mounting points for the rear swing arm and for the front head tube. So it's basically the entire chassis as well as the battery housing.
That's cool. And that is that the controller down there at the bottom? Maybe I'm just used to e-bikes doing this, but I noticed like right at the bottom there's kind of an external box.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the controller, though I'm not positive. That's the place where Zero mounts the controller on their bikes, and
Hmm.
so it's a pretty common spot. But I'm not positive that's the controller or the charger.
That's cool. At least it's easy to get to, although you might kick a rock up to right through that thing. So pluses and minuses. Our own Zach Hall, I believe, is one of the first 100, if I'm not mistaken. Uh, and I know that you're also slated to get a ride on one of these.
Yeah, I'm excited to test this one out. So Zach might be getting one before me to own, but I think I'll get to sit on one first.
Oh, cool. All right. I think we have one more post today. All right. Weird Alibaba. Check
I
out
think
this.
we had one
Oop,
before that actually, the
oop.
Zero.
I might have skipped. Sorry.
Got a
Oh
little
yeah.
excited for the Alibaba.
Yeah. Zero DSR X launched as world's first long-range electric adventure motorcycle.
Yeah, so Zero just launched a new version of their basically uses the SRF and SRS's design, though it's a stretched frame. It's a little more robust, and they've turned it into an adventure bike. So I actually had a chance to test this one out a few weeks ago in Park City, Utah, and man, this bike is a lot of fun. It's got their new biggest battery. I think it's 17 kilowatt hours, and it's rated for what's interesting. So it gets I think it's like 180-mile city range and something like an 80 or 90-mile highway range. But
Huh.
neither of those ranges really apply here because the bike is designed for off-road adventure riding. And so there's no industry standard for off-road range measurement. There's only on-road range measurement. So what they did was like they did the typical like highway city um, test cycles, but then they went out and they had their professional riders do a lot of adventure riding on trails. And what they found was that you basically get between 5 to 13 hours of runtime, depending how aggressively you're riding. And
Hmm.
so in my case, I did, I think, about 60 miles of mixed highway adventure and a bit of city. And I used about a third of the battery. So for me, that equates to about 180-mile range with that kind of mixed riding. But what's interesting is that when you're doing this kind of adventure riding, you're usually going slower than you think. And, we were averaging probably around 20 miles an hour or so, because when you're off road, everything feels faster, but you're not really going that fast because you're constantly slowing down, you're, taking tight turns, that sort of thing. And so you're effectively doing closer to city range because you're doing around city speeds. Now you might be in terrain that's a little less forgiving, but if you're doing 20 miles an hour, that's usually slower than you're going in a city. So that kind of makes up for it. What they find is that if you're a more aggressive adventure rider, you'll do a little bit worse than city range. If you're less aggressive, like I'm definitely a less aggressive rider, then you're probably going to do better than the city range of 180 miles. So that's sort of an interesting take there because there just aren't that many off-road or adventure style electric motorcycles out there yet to really get a good range comparison.
Yeah, and I'm always surprised at the disparity in city driving range and highway driving range. Like, I guess there's just no real way to make, besides crouching down, like, Top Gun or whatever, um, to get good aerodynamics on a bike. So the difference here is 80 miles on the highway and almost 200 miles in the city.
Yeah, and the big effect there is the meat sail sitting on top of the bike.
Right.
Like you said, like you got to tuck down, and it's interesting because when you do the range testing, it stipulates that you're not allowed to be in a tuck. You have to be in an upright
Right.
riding position. And so the between the SRF and the SRS, which are their street fighter and then their like fully fared aerodynamic bike, they both basically have the same range officially, but that's because they couldn't like crouch behind the windshield on the SRS, which is designed to make it more aerodynamic. So you can actually get about 10% more range on that bike when you ride it in an aerodynamic fashion, but they just weren't allowed to do that for range testing.
Yeah, and it's strange because you know, these bikes on a per kilowatt hour basis don't even get as good a highway mileage as like super aerodynamic cars. And when you think about a bike being a very small, light, comparatively, you know, a small footprint in terms of aerodynamic profile, and it's still it's still gets worse mileage per kilowatt. It's just kind of blows my mind. I still don't quite understand how. And I know the answer. I know it's like the meat sale thing, but it's still surprising to me.
Yeah, well, it's interesting when you look at the efficiency versus speed because at city ranges, bikes are super efficient compared to cars
Right,
because the biggest advantage is that they just weigh less, so you're moving less around. But
right.
like you said,
Less
when you
on
get up to
starts.
highway speed, oh man, it starts to reach parity, and in some cases, you could actually do better in a car in terms of efficiency if you're going fast enough.
Yeah, especially with super aerodynamic cars like Priuses and Teslas and stuff.
Yeah,
All right, now,
EV1s.
yeah. So now it's time for the weird Alibaba. Check out this $1,100 street legal with quotes 3-wheeled electric flatbed truck. And
Yeah,
our great illustrator Michael Bauer has, for those just listening, interesting pizza uh, illustration here.
Yeah, I think a flatbed truck is not the best pizza delivery vehicle for the same aerodynamic reasons that
Right.
motorcycles don't get great range. So yeah, this is the street legal is kind of a tease here. The product is called a street legal electric vehicle, but that must be in China only because I don't know where in the world this thing is going to be street legal. It's a tricycle, which means in the U.S. it would technically be a motorcycle class vehicle, and nothing about this looks legal for U.S. roads. That's for sure. I don't know about Europe, but typically they have pretty strict regulations as well.
Maybe on
But if we
campus roads or something.
There you go. Like for utility, I can see it. Like if you forget about street legal for a moment, this thing looks like, so useful for so many jobs. I mean, a flatbed truck, you can load anything on this. Though some people like to call these trucklets because they're kind of smaller than you'd think of a typical flatbed truck. As a tricycle, it's open, you just hop on, hop off. You're not going to be going faster than like, 20, 25 miles an hour. So you probably don't have to worry about tipping as long as don't take those turns too tightly. And of course, the thing is just super cheap, $1,100 before batteries. But I mean, you don't have to put too much battery in something this small. You could put a few kilowatt hours and use it for like a campus, like you said, or you see these sometimes around like stadiums for that kind of work. Trash collectors, basically like anything in a small area, municipal vehicles. This thing would be kind of perfect, and it's also got that like fun Soviet era lack of design that I love so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say it does have like a Soviet era. I don't know how they did it, but it looks like the picture looks like it's old. Like it looks like they somehow brought it back from like 30 years ago or something.
Yeah, it's got that kind of like North Korea-esque
Yeah.
design to it.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, it was like they recycled parts or something from somewhere else. But like, all kidding aside, you're right. This is like an incredibly useful type of vehicle. Um, where it would be acceptable in the US is probably a bigger question, but in maybe the North Korean embassy or something like that, that would be a great place for something like this.
Yeah, well, we'll hold out hope that we'll see these riding around somewhere because as silly as they are, there's a lot of usefulness hidden here.
All right, so that's it for today. I was just scanning over the comments. There's not much there. Christopher A, shout out from Peeksville. So he's my neighbor to the north. That's cool. Not much else specific. Candace M was hit by a car with brand new e-bike in April and surprised everybody that I lived after seeing the accident, but didn't remember ending up in a hospital. Truly glad it was a cheap hyper e-bike. I'm glad you're alive, Candace. Thanks for coming to the show.
Yeah, hope you healed up quickly. Looks like back in April, so hopefully you're doing well now. So I think that's it for our comments. So thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in, and we will be back in another 2 weeks